through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching Vyon World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandra.
And I'm Diksha Bisla, and coming up on the show today, Iran strongly condemned the strike on its massive South Pars natural gas field, the largest natural gas field in the world, and consequently, Iran targeted energy facilities across the Gulf and has threatened further attacks, raising fears of a wider assault. We're going to get you all the details on the show today. Stay tuned.
And as the war in West Asia continues to intensify, here's from the US. During a Senate hearing, the US intelligence chief, Tulsi Gabbard, admitted that Iran was not rebuilding nuclear enrichment capacities destroyed in the Israeli-US strikes last year in the 12-day war. We'll bring you the latest on that front as well. Let's start with the headlines first.
The Pentagon has reportedly requested more than $200 billion from the White House to fund the war in Iran. The Washington Post reported the figures, citing a senior administration official.
Iran has threatened to attack energy infrastructure across the Gulf region in retaliation for Israeli strikes on its largest gas field. Iran's Revolutionary Guards warned facilities across Saudi Arabia, UAE and Qatar would be completely destroyed if attacks don't stop.
Qatar has ordered Iran's military and security attaches, along with their staff, to leave the country within 24 hours. And this is after an alleged attack which caused extensive damage at Qatar's Ras Laffan industrial city.
Abu Dhabi has shut down operations at a gas facility due to falling debris from missile interceptions. The UAE's foreign ministry blamed Iran for the attack at Habshan gas facilities and at the Bab oil field.
US President Donald Trump attends the return of 6 US Air Force crew members who were killed during the Iran war. The KC-135 plane crashed in western Iraq last Thursday, bringing the number of US troops killed in the current war to at least 30.
US Intelligence Chief Tulsi Gabbard tells lawmakers that Pakistan's long-range ballistic missile development could include missiles capable of targeting the United States.
Pakistan and Afghanistan say they are pausing their military operations against each other for Eid al-Fitr, and this is a surprise move 2 days after a drug rehab center in Kabul was hit in the deadliest strike in months.
Thailand's new parliament is set to elect Anutin Charnvirakul as Prime Minister today, keeping the Conservative in the top office after his party routed its election rivals with a nationalist campaign.
Oil prices surged on West Asia tensions. Brent crude rose 4% to $111.80. US crude up 3% at $99.47. Iranian strikes hit Qatar's Ras Laffan LNG facility, which is responsible for nearly 20% of the global shipments, raising fears of a major supply crunch.
And Iran has targeted energy facilities across the Gulf and even threatened further attacks after a key gas field was hit in Iran,
raising fears of a wider assault on fuel supplies that could further jolt the global markets. Now, Qatar's state oil giant Qatar Energy has reported extensive damage after the Ras Laffan industrial city, which is an energy industry hub. It was hit by Iranian missiles. A vast fire illuminating the night sky was visible from about 30 kilometers away.
Qatar Energy said emergency teams were deployed immediately to contain the resulting fires at the Ras Laffan facility on the Gulf state's north coast. Qatar's foreign ministry condemned what they called a brutal Iranian attack targeting Ras Laffan, saying the targeting represented a direct threat to its national security.
Now, Doha's defense ministry said that its air defenses intercepted 2 Iranian ballistic missiles targeting Ras Laffan with no reported casualties.
The incident occurred shortly after US-Israeli strikes targeted Iran's South Pars gas field, part of the world's largest natural gas reserve, which is shared between Iran and Qatar.
The strikes prompted Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian to warn of uncontrollable consequences of attacks on energy infrastructure, where Iran later warned that it would destroy Gulf energy infrastructure if further strikes hit its own energy sector. Iran's Revolutionary Guards vowed further attacks and a much more severe response.
Qatar's foreign ministry ordered Iran's military and security attaches along with their staff to leave the country within 24 hours following an attack on its massive natural gas facility. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia said that it intercepted and even destroyed 4 ballistic missiles launched towards Riyadh. Multiple drones were also intercepted and destroyed as they headed towards Saudi gas facilities in the kingdom's eastern province.
And the civil defense said that 4 people were injured when shrapnel from a ballistic missile interception fell on a residential area of the Saudi capital, Riyadh. The attacks came as Saudi Arabia was hosting foreign ministers from across the Arab and Islamic worlds. And this was for talks in Riyadh to discuss the fallout from the West Asia war. Foreign ministers from Qatar, Jordan, Syria, Egypt, Turkey and Bahrain, they all attended the meeting in Riyadh, and Saudi Arabia's foreign minister said that the kingdom is not going to succumb to Iranian pressure. Listen to this.
The targeting of Riyadh while a number of diplomats are meeting, I cannot see as coincidental. And I think that's the clearest signal of how Iran feels about diplomacy. It doesn't believe in talking to its neighbors. It tries to pressure its neighbors. And what I can say categorically, that's not going to work. The kingdom is not going to succumb to pressure. And on the contrary, this pressure will backfire.
Furthermore, a British Naval Maritime Security Agency said that a projectile hit a vessel off the coast of the United Arab Emirates near the Strait of Hormuz, causing a fire. The Emirati capital's media office said that Abu Dhabi has shut down operations at a gas facility due to falling debris from missile interceptions.
Now, authorities also said that UAE air defenses intercepted Iranian missiles and drones after Iran struck a major gas facility in Qatar.
Shifting focus now to the US, the US intelligence chief Tulsi Gabbard has admitted that Iran was not rebuilding nuclear enrichment capacities which were destroyed in the Israeli-US strikes last year.
and the admission which was made in a Senate hearing. It directly contradicts the Trump administration's claim that Iran posed an imminent threat to the United States while Gabbard was testifying to the Senate Intelligence Committee. And interestingly, she did not make the admission directly. Gabbard omitted the reference to Iran from her oral remarks, and the admission was rather buried inside a written testimony where she revealed that Tehran had made no efforts to rebuild its uranium enrichment capability after the U.S. strikes in June last year. Democratic Senator Mark Warner had cornered Gabbard on the topic. Listen to this.
I guess what I'm concerned about, one thing is, even in your printed testimony today on page 6, and your last paragraph on page 6, as a result of Operation Midnight Hammer, Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated. There's been no efforts to try to rebuild their enrichment capability. You omitted that paragraph from your oral opening. Was that because the president had said there was an imminent threat 2 weeks?
No, sir. I recognize that the time was running long, and I skipped through some of the portions.
So you chose to take
my oral delivered remarks.
You chose to omit the parts that contradict the president.
Tulsi Gabbard also conceded that despite the heavy bombing by Israel and the US, the regime in Iran was intact. Interestingly, Trump has touted the regime change in Iran as one of the key objectives of the US strikes in Iran.
The IC assesses the regime in Iran appears to be intact but largely degraded due to attacks on its leadership and military capabilities. Its conventional military power projection capabilities have largely been destroyed, leaving limited options. Iran's strategic position has been significantly degraded.
Further, Gabbard deflected questions by Democratic senators when asked about whether she had advised President Trump before the attack on Iran. And this is what she said. Listen to this.
Did you brief the president, if he starts a war of choice, that the likely result would be that Iran would strike adjacent Gulf nations and close the Strait of Hormuz? Did you brief him on those two facts that I think have been consistently the assumptions of the intelligence community?
I have not and won't divulge internal conversations. I will say that those of us within the intelligence community continue to provide the president with all of the best objective intelligence available to inform his decisions.
And since the beginning of the war, US President Trump has repeatedly said that he ordered the attack on Iran because of an imminent threat. But Gabbard's admissions deal a severe blow to the Trump administration, which has largely endorsed Israel's claim that Tehran was dangerously close to a nuclear weapon. And it also comes just a day after top US counter-terror chief Joe Kent resigned from his position, saying that Iran posed no imminent threat to the US.
Well, further reports suggest that UK's National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, had also concluded that a deal with Iran was within reach, and Powell was part of the Oman-mediated talks. A report in The Guardian says that Powell believed the offer made by Iran on its nuclear program was significant enough to prevent a rush to war.
America's objectives in the war have changed frequently, with Washington struggling to explain the urgency behind the attack, as more voices admit that a breakthrough was possible via diplomacy and that Iran posed no imminent threat to the US. Washington's decision to join the Israeli war campaign is coming under heavy scrutiny, both at home and abroad.
And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report. Take a look.
President Trump's top intelligence officials, including Tulsi Gabbard and CIA Director John Ratcliffe, faced tough questions from the Senate Intelligence Committee over the administration's case for the Iran war. Lawmakers pressed them on whether or not Iran posed an imminent threat before the war began and whether intelligence was being shaped to fit President Trump's policies. The hearing showed skepticism on Capitol Hill about the administration's war justification, notably among Democrats. And now scrutiny is expanding to its price tag. Reports indicate the Pentagon has asked the White House to approve a supplemental request of more than $200 billion to fund the conflict and replenish weapons used in the campaign. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION, World is One.
And as the Iran war continues into its third week, more voices are emerging which are arguing that the nuclear deal with Iran was within reach and a war with Iran could have been avoided.
Now, the latest to join this chorus is UK's National Security Advisor Jonathan Powell. He was among those who attended the final talks between US and Iran. A report in The Guardian says that Powell believed the offer made by Iran on its nuclear program was significant enough to prevent a rush to war.
And according to the report, the British NSA felt that progress had been made in Geneva late February and during talks with US and Iranian officials which were mediated by Oman. The report also mentions that Powell even felt that the deal proposed by Iran was surprising.
2 days after the talks ended, Iran and US agreed to hold the next round of talks in Vienna on the 2nd of March. But 48 hours before this, the talks could even begin, Israel and the US launched joint attacks on Iran on the 28th of February.
Well, the revelation adds to the growing body of evidence that negotiations were close to clinching a deal. Yet, US chose to attack Iran under Israeli influence.
Now, the report has found support from Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. He said there are a growing number of voices across Europe and US are exclaiming that the war on Iran is unjust.
Well, Araghchi also referred to the resignation of Joe Kent, who led US's National Counter-Terrorism Center. And in his resignation letter, Kent wrote that the US went to war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. He also claimed that Trump had been duped by a misinformation campaign by high-ranking Israeli officials. Now, Kent is the first senior Trump administration official to resign over the war in Iran.
Hours after the joint Israeli-US attack on Iran began, Oman's Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi, who was mediating the talks between the two sides, had revealed that significant progress had in fact been made during these talks and a deal was within reach.
But US President Donald Trump claimed that the US attacked Iran because he had a feeling that Iran would strike first. Since then, America's objectives in the war have changed frequently, with Washington struggling to explain the urgency behind the attack. But as more voices admit that a breakthrough was possible via diplomacy, US's decision to join the Israeli war campaign is coming under heavy scrutiny.
All right, we're slipping into a very short break. There's more coming up on the other side. Amid rising tensions in West Asia, Iran has reiterated that it does not want any disruption to India. In an interview with Vyon, Iran's Deputy Ambassador to India, Mohammad Javad Hosseini, assured Indian shipping will not be affected in the Strait of Hormuz. Come right back, details on the other side.
Welcome back. You're watching World DNA, and our top focus remains on the rising tensions in West Asia, where now Iran has reiterated that it does not want any disruption to India.
And this was in an interview with Vyon, Iran's Deputy Ambassador to India, Mohammad Javad Hosseini, said that the Strait of Hormuz remains open, with assurances that Indian shipping will not be affected. Hosseini said that Iran is on the same page with India when it comes to shipping through Hormuz. He stressed that Iran does not want any pain for India, its people, or the Indian government. However, he warned that vessels linked to countries hostile to Iran may face restrictions.
We are on the same page with India that these ships should pass, But it is a matter of the time. We are working on it. Definitely there would be good news for the Indians. Because we believe if there is a pain in India, or the people are in pain, it is the pain of the Iranian people.
Well, Hosseini claimed that talks were underway when Iran was attacked. He said the discussions were not for a ceasefire, but for a permanent end to the war. He added there can be no talks until the United States acknowledges its wrongdoings. Listen to this.
They should end the war, not ceasefire. Because the last time we had a ceasefire, but this ceasefire changed again to another attack on Iran. The Strait of Hormuz, it is not closed. But we only let those countries who are the friends and who are not friends with our enemy to pass. Those who are actually supporting America, the Israeli, they cannot pass it. But still the strait is open.
And Hosseini accused the United States and Israel of targeting civilians, including women and children. He questioned the use of missiles in such strikes and called for international condemnation. He also said Iran continues to face ongoing attacks from American forces. And while the Iran war is in its third week now, Israeli ambassador to India spoke at WION's annual summit, WION World Pulse, in New Delhi.
Envoy Vyon defended Tel Aviv's ongoing operations against Iran. He said the goal is to dismantle Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. While the Israeli envoy also assessed that Israel had the capability to continue its operations. The envoy reflected on when the war will end, if US will invade Iran, US allies support India's actions amid energy supply disruptions and much more. Listen to this.
My first question, something that we all want to ask you is, when will this war come to an end?
Well, it's a good question. I think that we have said at the outset that this might take a few weeks. We are pretty advanced when it comes to fulfilling our military targets. We started with hitting pretty hard the leadership and also the missile and industrial capability of the Iranian regime. We went on to hit the Basij, as you saw yesterday, and we attacked again the leadership of the regime. What we want to achieve is to remove two existential threats that were looming on our country and our region. That's the military nuclear program and the ballistic missile program. That the Iranians were planning to dig very deep into a mountain and make it immune to either our or American attack. So because of the fact that this regime has been threatening us for so many decades and has sworn to destroy the state of Israel, we found ourselves in this situation that we had no choice but to take action. I believe we have the oxygen to continue with this for more weeks. We have stated that very clearly in terms of our capability to continue working on the targets, our capability to defend ourselves. The European response, I think, was a pretty mixed baggage. On the one hand, they are pretty happy that we are removing this threat. On the other hand, they are sort of sensitive to the repercussions. They have some political complications, especially in some of the countries that are making them not to be very decisive when it goes to supporting their American allies. I think this is going to have repercussions because President Trump is not very satisfied with this kind of weak response coming out from Europe.
In other news, the U.S. State Department says it is adding 12 countries to an expanding list of nations whose citizens must post bonds of up to $15,000 to apply for U.S. visas.
And the expanded visa bond program, which requires certain foreign nationals to pay $15,000 for a B1 or B2 visa for business and tourism, will go into effect on the 2nd of April. After April 2nd, citizens of 50 countries will be subject to the requirement, which was rolled out by the Trump administration last year as it cracked down on visa overstays and, more broadly, moved to curtail illegal migration.
The measure will apply to applicants from Cambodia, Ethiopia, Georgia, Grenada, Lesotho, Mauritius, Mongolia, Mozambique, Nicaragua, Papua New Guinea, Seychelles and Tunisia. Now, the State Department noted that the program is aimed at reducing illegal visa overstays and added that nearly 97% of about 1,000 bonded travelers have returned home on time.
The U.S. State Department says the bond will be returned to visa recipients who return home in compliance with the terms of the visa or who do not travel. All right, time to slip into a short break. This is World DNA. More reports coming up on the other side. Come right back.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week, creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION. World is One. Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
breaking news.
And raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. Vyon World is One. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Vielleicht nur als Imposant.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Deeksha. I'm Shivan. Lots more to discuss. Let's start with the headlines first.
The Pentagon has reportedly requested more than $200 billion from the White House to fund the war in Iran. The Washington Post reported the figure, citing a senior administration official.
Iran has threatened to attack energy infrastructure across the Gulf region in retaliation for Israeli strikes on its largest gas field. Iran's Revolutionary Guards warn facilities across Saudi Arabia, UAE and Qatar would be completely destroyed.
Qatar has ordered Iran's military and security attaches, along with their staff, to leave the country within 24 hours. This is after an alleged attack which caused extensive damage at Qatar's Ras Laffan industrial city.
Abu Dhabi has shut down operations at a gas facility due to falling debris from missile interceptions. The UAE's foreign ministry blamed Iran for the attack at the Habshan gas facility and at the Bab oil field.
US President Donald Trump attends the return of 6 US Air Force crew members who were killed during the Iran war. The KC-135 plane crashed in western Iraq last Thursday, bringing the number of US troops killed in the current war to at least 30.
US Intelligence Chief Tulsi Gabbard tells lawmakers that Pakistan's long-range ballistic missile development could include missiles capable of targeting the United States.
Pakistan and Afghanistan say they are pausing their military operations against each other for Eid al-Fitr. A surprise move 2 days after a drug rehab center in Kabul was hit in the deadliest strike in months.
Thailand's new parliament is set to elect Anutin Charnvirakul as Prime Minister today, keeping the Conservative in the top office after his party routed its election rivals with a nationalist campaign.
Asian stocks fell on Thursday, led by South Korea's Kospi down 2.6% and Japan's Nikkei 225 down 2.5%, and Australia's ASX 200 opened lower while Hong Kong's Hang Seng futures pointed down. US markets also sank overnight, with the Dow hitting a new low for the year. Well, it's day 20 of the war in West Asia, and the latest Israeli strikes have killed Iran's intelligence chief, marking another blow to its leadership.
A strike also hit the South Pars field, that's the world's largest gas reserve in Iran, and Tehran has vowed retaliation, saying that it would destroy oil and gas industry of its Gulf neighbors if attacks don't stop. And here are the top developments that we're tracking for you on day 20. Iran's Revolutionary Guards warned neighboring Gulf nations that their oil and gas industries would be completely destroyed if Israel or the US conduct any further attack against Iranian energy infrastructure.
Earlier, Iran blamed Israel and the United States for strikes on its giant South Pars gas facility, with President Masoud Pezeshkian warning of uncontrollable consequences of energy infrastructure attacks. The UAE and Qatar have condemned these strikes on Iran's gas plant.
Qatar says that it has successfully intercepted 4 out of 5 ballistic missiles launched from Iran, while the 5th hit Ras Laffan industrial city and caused extensive damage. Ras Laffan is where the core of Qatar Energy's LNG processing takes place.
French President Emmanuel Macron calls for a moratorium on strikes against civilian infrastructure after speaking with President Donald Trump and the Qatari leader. Macron wrote that it is in the common interest to implement without dealing a moratorium on strikes targeting civilian infrastructure, particularly energy and water infrastructure.
A man was killed by an apparent cluster bomb impact in central Israel following Iran's latest ballistic missile attack. Israeli first responders said that the man, identified as a 30-year-old foreign worker, several apartment cluster munition impacts were reported across central Israel.
At least 3 Palestinian women were killed in the occupied West Bank by falling shrapnel shortly after Israel's military reported another Iranian missile barrage. Air raid sirens also went off from northern to southern Israel after at least 1 missile launch was detected from Lebanon.
A pro-Iranian armed group in Iraq has pledged to stop attacking the US embassy for 5 they've pledged to stop attacking the US embassy for 5 days, subject to several conditions. And these conditions include Israel ceasing its bombardment of Beirut suburbs and a commitment to refrain from bombing residential areas in Baghdad and other provinces. The US embassy has been targeted by drone and rocket attacks several times in recent days in Iraq. Iran has signaled that its nuclear doctrine is unlikely to change.
And this even as questions remain over the position of its new leadership. In an interview, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi also called for a new framework to govern the shipping through the Strait of Hormuz after the war. Listen to this.
Iran's nuclear doctrine has been a peaceful one, and we have always sought and still seek to exercise our rights to benefit from peaceful nuclear energy. A fatwa, as you know, depends on the person who issues it. I am not yet in a position to judge what the new leader's jurisprudential or political stance on this matter will be. My understanding is that it should not differ greatly from our previous policies, but we must wait until we become aware of his views. I believe that after the war, the first step should be drafting a new protocol for the Strait of Hormuz. Naturally, this should be done between the countries that lie on both sides of the strait, as they are the principal parties in this matter, and it should guarantee that safe passage through the strait takes place under specific conditions.
He further warned that Iran will not allow its enemies to use the waterway, even as some countries continue to seek safe passage guarantees. Araghchi said the ongoing war has already made the route insecure for many vessels.
It is natural that we have not limited ourselves only to their formal military bases. Wherever there has been a concentration of Americans, wherever they have had facilities belonging to them, those places have been targeted. Some of these may have been close to urban areas. This is not our fault.
Arakshi acknowledged that people across the region have been affected. He said Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has expressed regret over the impact, but he maintained the responsibility for the conflict lies with Washington.
It is the United States' behavior that has brought the region to this point. I accept that our friendly countries are upset and that the people of the region have been harmed. That is why Dr. Pezeshkian apologized to the people of the region, because as a result of US aggression against us and our response and retaliation, they may have been affected. But all of this is America's fault.
All right, now let's take a look at the best moments from the Vyon World Pulse Summit, which was held in New Delhi.
And this is, of course, a summit where world leaders, diplomats, industry icons, they all gathered to decode the rhythm of the new world order. Take a look.
We have a very good relation, deeply rooted in the history. We had some negotiation with the Indians government, I think 3 or 4 times that Excellency Jaishankar he had with his Iranian counterpart, and also the Excellency PM Modi with Excellency Pezeshkian. They discussed the issues. And we showed our sincere, actually, we can say, view toward the Indians that to let these ships to pass safely through this strait, because we believe if there is a pain in the India, or the people are in pain, it is the pain of the Iranian people.
Your struggle and reaching where you are today, has been a lesson and a journey that's been closely watched both on screen around the world. But I have to ask you, who or what motivates and inspires you?
Well, we have at various stages of, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you. It's nice to see wonderful people over here. Thanks to Vyon. My wife only watches this channel.
That's great to know.
So she was very... Yeah, so she was very thrilled that I was invited here. She thought I was important.
First of all, thank you, Vyon, for giving me this award. Now I think I'm used to getting so many awards, but all thanks to my mom. I started playing just because I used to love sports. It was nothing about becoming a professional player. In 99, हम सबको क्या पता था बैडमिंटन इतना बड़ा हो जाएगा. Second most loved sport है अभी इंडिया का. लेकिन वो टाइम पे सिर्फ एक ही सपना था, जो मम्मी बोलेगी वो करना है. And in fact, I didn't.
It was a power-packed summit, the Vyon World Pulse, and we'll bring you more glimpses of what really happened last evening. As of now, let's look at other global news. US Intelligence Chief Tulsi Gabbard says that Pakistan's long-range ballistic missile development could include missiles capable of targeting even the United States.
Well, in a testimony before a Senate panel, Gabbard also said that threats to the US are set to expand from more than 3,000 missiles at present to over 16,000 by 2035. Now, the Director of National Intelligence underlined that Russia, China, North Korea, Iran and Pakistan have been researching and developing missile delivery systems with nuclear and conventional payloads that put the US within range.
Elaborating on the threats, she said the intelligence community assesses that China and Russia are developing advanced delivery systems meant to penetrate or bypass US missile defenses, while North Korea's intercontinental ballistic missiles could already reach US soil.
She added that Pakistan's long-range ballistic missile development could potentially include ICBMs with a range capable of striking the US homeland.
And the annual threat assessment presented to the US Senate also stated that India and Pakistan remain at risk of nuclear conflict. The 34-page report said that although India and Pakistan do not seek open conflict, conditions exist for terrorist actors to continue creating catalysts for crises. The report used the example of last year's Pahalgam attack to underline the dangers of terrorist incidents sparking a wider conflict.
And in the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh, farmers have found a unique way to tackle the money menace and save their crop.
Well, they are trying to save against the monkeys, and farmers are dressing up as bears in attempts to do that. even growling at them to drive the monkeys away.
And of course, to protect the crops, and this approach appears to be far more effective than previous methods of scaring them, such as chasing them with brooms, banging pots and pans, and installing scarecrows, which did little to keep them at bay. And not just monkeys, this method is also being used to steer away stray cows that risk ransacking the crops. Similar methods have been tried across North Indian cities known for their monkey menace. In parts of New Delhi, men are even hired to wear costumes to impersonate the larger black-faced monkeys whom rhesus monkeys fear naturally. However, the reality behind this rising menace is far too grim. Deforestation and rapid land encroachment are shrinking forest patches where these animals once resided and searched for food, forcing them to invade human settlements. The United States Defense Department is moving to build its own artificial intelligence systems after a breakdown in talks with Anthropic.
Now, the shift highlights growing tensions between technology firms and governments over how AI should be used in national security. The U.S. Department of Defense has begun developing multiple large language models for use inside government-controlled environments. According to the officials, engineering work is already underway, with these systems expected to be ready for operational use very soon. And this comes after a falling out with Anthropic over how its AI technology could be used by the military. The two sides failed to agree on key terms, particularly around limits on AI deployment. Anthropic had sought restrictions to prevent its systems from being used for mass surveillance of Americans or in fully autonomous weapons.
However, the Pentagon did not accept these conditions, leading to the collapse of a $200 million contract. In the aftermath, the Defense Department has turned to other AI players. OpenAI has signed a new agreement with the Pentagon. At the same time, XAI has also entered the picture, with its Grok model being used in classified systems. Meanwhile, the split with Anthropic has escalated further. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has labelled the company a supply chain risk. Now, this is a designation that restricts other defense contractors from working with it. Anthropic has challenged this decision in court, meanwhile.
New data on global arms exports reveals how defense industries shape geopolitical power.
The United States leads by a wide margin, but France, Russia and China, they remain key players in the global weapons race. Take a look at this next report for more details.
Across the world, the trade in major weapons, from fighter jets to missiles, naval vessels to armored vehicles, remains one of the most strategically important markets. According to data from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, covering the most recent 5-year period, the global arms export market was dominated by a handful of countries. Between 2020 and 2024, the United States accounted for 43% of all global arms exports, by far the largest share worldwide. That's nearly 5 times more than its closest rival. France sits in second place with about 9.6%, followed by Russia at roughly 7.8% of total exports. China, Germany, and Italy all contribute smaller portions but remain in the top tier of global suppliers. Together, the top 10 countries make up about 90% of the global arms trade, illustrating how concentrated the industry is. While some nations supply weapons, others buy them. Recent superior data shows countries like India and Saudi Arabia among the world's largest arms importers, with India alone accounting for around 8 to 11% of global imports depending on the reporting period. Europe and West Asian states have also ramped up defense purchases in recent years, driven in part by regional conflicts and security concerns. Russian export volumes have declined sharply in the last decade, dropping from first or second place historically to a more distant third in recent assessments. Now, partly due to geopolitical sanctions and prioritizing domestic military needs. By contrast, France's shares has grown significantly, helped by major contracts for aircraft, submarines, and other systems. These numbers aren't just economic. They reflect global power projection and strategic influence, where cutting-edge military technology flows can strengthen alliances or fuel regional tensions. Strong exporters often supply allied nations with advanced defense equipment, shaping security balances from West Asia to the Indo-Pacific. And while defense industries drive billions in economic output, the concentration of arms exports also raises questions about global stability and military dependencies. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And as the geopolitical tensions in West Asia escalate, the global safe haven hierarchy seems to be undergoing a shift.
While traditional assets like gold and the US dollar, they have entered a period of volatility, Bitcoin and the broader cryptocurrency market they've emerged as a borderless 24/7 alternative. Experts say that the divergence is rooted in accessibility and utility as the war triggers fears of fresh sanctions and trade barriers. Traditional markets face rigid closures and liquidity bottlenecks.
Now, gold is often the first port of call in a crisis, but as inflation risks grow globally, the appeal of holding a non-yielding metal has dented its appeal. The dollar index has strengthened to multi-year highs as crude oil prices increase. And when that happens, buyers of crude need more dollars to buy the same amount of oil. While the dollar has benefited from its petrol trade, fears of sanctions and Trump's policies have left traders with few options but to book profits.
In contrast, Bitcoin reclaimed the $72,000 mark in the first week of the war. It is often dubbed digital gold and has stepped up to the occasion as a safe haven asset. The digital assets they're up around 10% since the first bombs went off in West Asia, with oil prices hovering around $100 per barrel and the Strait of Hormuz facing threats. Crypto's decentralized nature has moved from theory to practice.
Now, unlike gold, which requires physical logistics, or the dollar, which is tied to the US banking system, digital assets operate on a neutral, 24/7, 365 days infrastructure that is relatively decentralized. This digital gold narrative is no longer just a trend. It is a strategic move that's acting as a hedge in an increasingly fragmented world.
National award-winning filmmaker Aditya Dhar has issued a formal apology to fans following the sudden cancellation of regional language screenings for his highly anticipated spy thriller sequel, Dhurandhar: The Revenge.
And as the film prepared for its massive global rollout, audiences in South India were met with disappointment when the scheduled paid previews for the Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam and Kannada versions were abruptly pulled from theatres.
Now, the disruption was attributed to a combination of technical glitches involving the delivery of digital cinema packages and last-minute post-production delays required to finalize the various dubbed iterations of the film. On social media, Dhar expressed deep regret for the inconvenience caused to his audience. He emphasized that the project was a dream and that he intended to share it with everyone in all languages. The director explained that while the Hindi version proceeded as planned, the unforeseen technical hurdles necessitated rescheduling the Malayalam Kannada shows to the following morning. And this move was a strategic attempt to ensure that the quality of the regional cinematic experience remained uncompromised, despite the logistical setback.
Now, the cancellations caused significant ripples across major cinema chains, where theatre owners were forced to offer immediate refunds or give patrons the option to switch to Hindi language screenings with subtitles. Industry insiders suggest that the pressure to meet a simultaneous multi-language release, that combined with late-stage edits requested by the censor board, created hurdles in the final hours before the premiere. Now, despite these hindrances, the film's Hindi previews saw record-breaking attendance, signaling that the Dhurandhar phenomenon remains strong as it enters its first full day of release during the festive weekend of Gudi Padwa and Eid. In another post, Dhar also requested his fans not to share spoilers or record the movie on their phones while watching it in theatres.
Alright viewers, that's a wrap on this edition of World DNA. We'll slip into a short break. This is Vyon, World is One. Come right back.
WION Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to WION Health Resort. Make your reservation at WION.com.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime is your front row seat to darkness.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Beyond the noise and rhetoric, no election, no ballot issue too small. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. More than just headlines. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION. World is One.
In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION. World is One. Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
Breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. Vyon World is One.
Vielleicht nur als